Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Moltrap here, coming at you once again with Klazart, doing Game 3 of the Air Force Ace team versus CJ Entis. CJ Entis is up 2-0 at the moment, but the Ace star Anytime, who actually has been doing really well for Ace so far in Pro League, in the first few seasons of the Pro League, or first few rounds of this season of the Pro League, rather, has been getting a lot of wins for Air Force. So, if anyone can take on Savior, it is going to be Anytime on the Air Force team. This is going to be played on Outsider, which is again one of the new Pro League maps. It's kind of an interesting map. All the new maps are really interesting. It's a sort of a normal 3-player map where you have your main base and then you have a ramp down to a natural expansion. But then there's also like a ramp behind your main base you can get a mineral only expansion, or theoretically you could actually trick a probe or something through those minerals and then use it as a gas expansion because there's gas on the other side of those minerals. And then there's another gas mineral expansion on the other side. So, people have been musing that theoretically Zergs could even trick a drone through and put a hatchery between those two gases and get, just an expansion which does nothing but mine from 2 gas mines. So there's a lot of weird expansions all over the place, but at least initially it's gonna play out sort of like a normal sort of map. And actually, it looks like Anytime is gonna do sort of a similar build to what Much did last game, and he's gonna go for probably a 1-gate tech build. And what he might do is just block his ramp with zealots or something like that, and then you can actually build down behind your base and use that, like I said, use those minerals as a mineral only expansion. So maybe that's what he's gonna do, and just go 1-gate tech and get an expansion off that. But anyway, we do see him scouting around. He's going to scout incorrectly at first. Savior is going to send his overlord the right direction, but they're both going to spot each other about the same time.
Yeah, it looks like Savior just about ready to get his expansion up. I think he's gone for what looks like an overpool. To me, he's now just about getting his natural up, but Anytime's going to know what's going on. Savior looks really tired and bored almost for some reason. I don't see that fire and anger that I'm used to seeing with Savior. I think he was a little bit disappointed with last season, and I think he was even more disappointed that it wasn't he who helped CJ close out the win in the final matchup against Oz. It was actually Sky High who 4-0'd Oz after Savior lost to Jaedong in what was a pretty stunning performance by Jaedong up to that point. And I think Jaedong probably just relaxed when he thought that he had the game won. Savior's overlord just now getting over to Anytime's base. Now Savior with his first initial links out, and if the second Zealot can come out in time and block the ramp, then Anytime's probably going to be okay, and Anytime's timed this perfectly, and he's got the second Zealot out. And if Anytime had potentially gone for a Forge Fast Expand, he could have been in a little bit of trouble because his scout did go in the wrong direction, although he would have probably been forced to put a couple of cannons down. As it is, I find these new maps interesting, and they're gonna, and you're right, I mean, if a player is not doing Forge Fast Expand that you, on a map like this, they're probably going to go one gate tech, as you said. But yeah, again, I'm not so sure about Anytime's chances versus Savior, because first of all, Savior is, I think, after July or par with July at killing Protoss. I would say Savior is probably a little bit better than July at killing Protoss, since I think Savior is more consistently able to beat Bisu these days than say July. But and Anytime, I don't think Protoss versus Zerg is necessarily his best matchup. So even though Anytime might be performing the best for Ace, it's kind of like being I don't want to be offensive here, but kind of like being king of the blinds. He might beat he might beat players with one hand tied behind their back. But that doesn't necessarily. He might be the best player out of players tied with one hand tied behind their back, but that doesn't mean he's gonna beat everyone else. Unfortunately, that's actually an Indian expression, and it doesn't translate too well to English. I apologize if anyone was offended by it. But Anytime has actually tricked that probe through the mineral line. It looks like he is setting up an expansion there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. How the map makes for interesting things like that. Savior's actually gotten a den already, so he's not going to try and go for a quick third expansion and do that. He's going to go off of 2 bases at this point, maybe even off of a 2 hatchery build. It's hard to tell. But yeah, Anytime he's tricked it through, and the thing is that it makes it so your expansion gets a gas mine. And that's obviously advantageous and almost necessary for Protoss against Zerg. But at the same time, it's also going to make it really vulnerable because you cannot send reinforcements to that expansion. There's just no way. I mean, unless you are going all air, or you have a lot of shuttles. There's no way you can get reinforcements over there. So, I mean, because they obviously can't walk through, the minerals. So if Savior goes for some faster air units, some faster mutalisks or something like that, then that expansion might be in danger. Or if he goes for drop, that expansion will definitely be in danger later on in the game. So, but we'll have to see how that plays out. Have you seen? Now, maybe I missed something. Is Savior going for just a 2-hatch build of some kind, or no? Never mind. No, he's setting up for a third base, and he's got a lair. So I was completely wrong about that. So he's just setting up for a pretty more normal game and getting a Spire down after his den, which is abnormal of late, but still obviously not unviable.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, this sort of strategy that Anytime's gone for. There's obviously a trade-off here in that you can set up that expansion relatively cheaply without having to spend any resources on defense, i.e. photon cannons, although you still have to defend your main. And I think personally, I'm not a huge fan of it because you're still going to spend the resources to defend your main. Okay, maybe you'll spend slightly less, but before, when you went Forge Fast Expand, you would at least be using the resources. The defense you would have would also simultaneously be defending your main against ground units. Now you've got a separate expansion, which perhaps, and Savior now tricking a drone through his minerals to try and get that dual gas expansion as you talked about earlier, and Savior's going to be getting the 3 gas up and running pretty early on with this technique. But yeah, so you've got an expansion that's easy to get and doesn't require much investment in defense early on. But the problem is that, as you said, it's incredibly difficult to reinforce. And I think against Zerg for Protoss, I don't think it's a great option because we've seen these +1 defense scourges being used by Zerg players who are not allowing Protoss players to establish air superiority. And if they can do that, then all it requires is an Overlord with a few lings or whatever to be dropped in to lay waste to an expansion like that. Or you're going to have to spend a lot of photon cannons fairly early on because a Zerg can get that tech going early on, especially if they maneuver that Overlord in a good position. So I guess it comes down to sort of an air superiority battle. Anytime doing a decent job of just keeping Savior at bay right now with those Corsairs, and he's also done a good job of preserving his Corsairs. He's now got his Templar archives up as well. So both players in a decent position. Is Anytime up slightly ahead at this point? It's difficult to say because even though he's got that expansion, Saviour's now set up that other hatchery to take the double gas. So while Anytime will have that expansion, Savior will have an extra gas, and that's going to play a little bit to Savior's advantage.
Right, and Savior will have the mineral expansion as well, since he's put one of his hatcheries there. So really kind of an interesting play, and I think this build might be, I can't be certain off the top of my head, but this build might even be kind of tailored to this map, getting the den earlier so we can get a little bit more hatcheries later on, still safely. I don't know. Maybe I'm not exactly sure what I'm talking about anymore. But point being that the build he's gone for, even though it's been a little bit non-standard, he's managed to basically been able to secure that double gas and essentially three sets of mineral patches and 4 gas mines. So if Anytime doesn't come out and basically do some damage to Savior pretty quick here, then we're going to see Savior start teching up and come out with basically, 4 gas worth of units, and you do not want a Zerg player to have 4 gas when you only have 2 bases. That is just not the position you want to be in. He's already got one of those gas mines up. Drones are going to pop for the 4th gas mine in just a moment, and it's just going to be absolutely ridiculous here. And now he's putting out Mutalisks. I mean, he could easily, theoretically, go in just with a bunch of Mutalisks and some Scourge for backup with 4 gas and really be able to do a lot of damage that way.
And great position of those Heartless from Savior as well, anticipating the shuttle coming in. He's closing out all avenues, and those 2 Heartless are going to spot the shuttle at the very least, and Savior's then going to be able to bring Scourges around. The shuttle flies past the Heartless, and yeah, Savior's definitely seen the Heartless, so he's going to be able to put it immediately. You can see the stream of yellow flying in on the map, and that's all of Savior's Air Force converging onto his main, where there is a DT heading for Savior's main. The shuttle gets taken out by 2 Scourges. The 2 DTs are going to do minimal damage at best, because Savior's Mutalisks are going to be waiting there for them, and there's an Overlord waiting as well. So Anytime's Gambit unfortunately has come to naught. And I've got to tell you, at first glance, this map looks like it might be real hard for Protoss to play. They're going to have to start out with a Forge Fast Expand opening. I think this is going to be a map where the choice that Protoss players have are going to be severely limited, because if you don't go Forge Fast Expand, if you try and do what Anytime has done, I think on the previous map, where Much's strategy was a lot more viable than it is on this map, because it just looks like the Zerg player can just grow out of all proportion. And I'm not even sure how good the Forge Fast Expand is going to be, because those early 2 gas that a Zerg player can defend so easily, I'm just not sure. I just have a feeling that this map isn't going to be hugely balanced for Zerg versus Protoss. I guess time will tell as we see better players. Well, I won't say better players, but as we see players like maybe Bisu play on this map, and we see what sort of builds happen there. But it doesn't. I have to say, it doesn't augur well for Protoss the way it looks like to me right now. Savior now coming in with his Heartless into that Expo, which has pretty much no defense, and it's going to be really horrible for any time, because he's invested so many resources in it. Now he's lured the Corsairs into a field of fire, and the Scourges are just going to come in and kamikaze all those Corsairs down, and there goes Anytime's Air Force. So in one fell swoop, Savior has taken out Anytime's expansion, and he's taken out his entire Air Force, and now Anytime is forced to do a pretty much suicidal attack against Savior's natural X. Well, he's got a decent sized ground force, but Savior can just pull his Mutalisk back, and he's already got 4 Sunkens, and Anytime is going to struggle to even, and he doesn't even have speed or anything, so Anytime is going to really struggle to do any sort of damage here, and he can't do anything. And Savior cleverly popping a couple of hatcheries or a couple of big buildings in front of those Sunkens to prevent Anytime from getting in physical range. And that's GG, folks.
That's pretty much GG, yeah. Savior anticipating that counter, just throwing down a couple of Evo chambers in front of his Sunkens and basically neutralizing the Zealots.
Oh, that's what they were.
Yeah, and then making it so that one Dragoon was all that could, fire over those Evos. And it looks like maybe partly why he didn't go for the Forge Fast Expand was because I'm not sure that it's set up where you can get a good door. It looks like there might be kind of too wide of an area. I don't know. It's hard to tell. I haven't really had a chance to go in and look at the map too closely yet. But yeah, I mean, Savior took control of the air, and that is just enables Savior to just work his way around the map, taking all of these locked expansions that you need to get air to get into. And there's just nothing that can be done at this point. It's kind of like I said at the beginning of the game. If Savior got Mutas and Scourge to back up off 4 gas, then that'd pretty much be it. And now Anytime has managed to get that natural expansion up while losing his previous expansion, and its Savior is now basically at 5 bases essentially, because he's taken the base in the bottom left now as well, versus 2 bases and no good tech units right now at all for Anytime. This is like you said, this is pretty much GG.
Yeah, this is unfortunately for Anytime. This is like the Icelandic banking system. Unfortunately, it's just all falling apart. Savior with a few Zerglings out now, scouting around the map, looking for probes, looking for any other expansion that Anytime might try and put out. And Savior is really sunken. He's got something like 10 Sunkens at his natural Expo. I guess he realizes that the only way Anytime can do any damage is if he puts in a Sunken break here, because Savior's got air superiority, so Anytime has to rely on his ground forces. I think Anytime it might have dual starports, because he is putting out a lot of Corsairs. Now Anytime trying to take that 3rd expansion at the 2 o'clock position. Savior's going to come in with his massive Mutalisks and once again try and catch Anytime's Corsairs and see Anytime trying to bring a High Templar in, but unfortunately for Anytime he's now going to lose his expansion. There's a High Templar there. Savior had a chance to snipe that High Templar. I guess the High Templar didn't have energy in it, or Savior didn't start it. Oh, Savior getting hit by the storms. It's not going to hurt him too much though, because he was able to maneuver out of it. Archon coming in, but Savior's taken on all 4 photon cannons. Anytime a little bit slow to bring that Archon out, and again slow to cast the Mutalisk with the storm. He had a couple of opportunities there, but by the time he cast it, Savior not taking too much damage. And now he's going to try and use Archon. Savior with good spread, just using brilliance by Savior. He uses the Mutalisks as an Iron Curtain to sneak those Scourges through, and I think only 2 or 3 of the Scourges didn't hit. Most of them managed to land hits on those Corsairs. I'm not sure how many Corsairs he killed there, but this just map looks to me like Protoss strategy options are going to be so limited against this sort of build from Zerg. I'm glad this is being played in the Pro League. I hope it's not featured in the MSL or the OSL until it's been feature tested a little bit. I have a bad feeling that this map is ultimately going to turn into a Zerg versus Zerg map, because any other race is going to be really hard to play on this. Maybe Terran, it might be a different kettle of fish, but certainly I think Protoss won't be playing on this map in the Pro League.
Yeah, it looks that way so far. It's with Savior taking a 6th, possibly 7th base on the map. Anytime just getting his 3rd back up now. I gotta hand it to Anytime. He did do a pretty decent job defending there with all those Scourge and Muta coming in. He got a decent storm off, got a couple hits, and then he used a single Archon to protect his Corsairs against the last few Scourge. But now, so look at this. Savior putting down Defiler Mound, Greater Spire, and Ultralisk Cavern and Hatchery at the same time. And another hatchery in the top. This is just ridiculous. I think anytime, I hate to say it, but I think anytime would save himself some grief and embarrassment if he just left the game right now, because otherwise he's just going to get hit with so many units. It's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be absolutely ridiculous. I don't know why Savior hasn't just stomped down on him and just finished him off yet, to be completely honest. And there's probably some Guardians, maybe Devourers, to work on doing that. Wow, this is just silly. And here's Anytime pushing out with a little bit of ground force. He's got a good mix of units: High Templar, Dragoons, Zealots, and basically that's kind of his last chance, is to maybe do some damage with this ground force, which has actually been forced back into his natural, so there's no chance of him doing damage with that. So, yeah, it's pretty much just a matter of time. I don't know if Anytime even realizes that Savior has so many bases. Look at this. Guardians everywhere, spreading around. Scourge and Mutalisk in the air to defend against Corsairs when that will inevitably come to defeat the Guardians, and they're all spread out, so he can't even storm them. Wow, so this is just been a slaughter.
Yeah, Anytime pushing out with his entire ground force, and Savior's finally managed to lure him out, and Anytime realizes that, I mean, it doesn't really matter, even if he takes this expansion down, Savior's got so many expansions, and so far ahead in terms of resources. I've got to say, Anytime isn't great storm by Anytime, and another great storm by Anytime, and Savior a little bit cavalier there, a little bit overconfident, just running in with his Mutalist. Meanwhile, he's taken down that expansion that Anytime had invested pretty much all of his resources in setting up. I think Anytime is almost mined out in his main. Yeah, he is. So he's basically going to be down to like one expansion in about, I don't know, 30 seconds or so. He did manage to kill the expansion of Savior's at the 9 o'clock position, but Savior is not going to care because he got so many expansions up early. That's one of the advantages of Zerg players who really expand all over the map. Because they get all those expansions up, their mineral patches last that much longer because their drones are spread out across so many different mineral patches. And now the Devour is coming into play as well, and Anytime's Air Force having to run and engage in guerrilla tactics, which unfortunately are going to do him no good. I've got to say, Savior and the combination of this map are making Anytime look like a lot worse a player than he is.
Yeah.
I mean, Savior, Anytime is looking a little bit like John McCain here, which he isn't. But unfortunately for him, he's going to go down.
Oh man, yeah, it looks like he's
actually, I rephrase that. Anytime is looking like Sarah Palin when actually he's more of a John McCain.
Oh man, that's one way of putting it, I suppose. Yeah, he's desperately trying to move out here. He has managed to keep that ground force alive and do decently well with that. It looks like Savior actually canceled those Evo chambers earlier after building them as a blockade in order to let his units come out easier, but now he's putting them back up again. That door is just completely solid. So yeah, I mean, there's just no way at all that Anytime's going to be able to just force his way into that past literally at 12, 14 Sunkens with a blockade in the front as well. He's going to have to try and go around and pick off expansions and that sort of thing. But again, Savior he's kept air superiority the whole time, and I think that was pretty critical as well. I mean, and now with Nidus Canals to move his forces around as well. But I think that taking early, it's kind of interesting how that ended up happening, because Savior initially kind of gave up air superiority by going for the Hydralisks first and not getting a Spire until after his 4th hatch. So it's kind of interesting that eventually, once he did take that air superiority, he was able to have so much control over the map. I wonder if there had been a point where Anytime could have taken control of that air, and maybe the game would have been much different from there on out if he'd hadn't relinquished control of the air so early.
No, I don't think that would have happened, because I think Savior's timed it down to the last second. He knew the amount of time it would take Anytime to get a shuttle out. The only way Anytime would have done it would have been if you truly went for a 1-gate tech build and didn't invest in an expansion at all, or a 1-base build, or I don't know, even the Forge Fast expansion, I don't think it would have worked, because Savior knew that by the time Anytime's shuttle would have come out, he would have gotten had the 4 gas up and running for a little bit of time, and would be Savior just laying waste to Anytime's entire base right now, and my video seems to have frozen because all I'm seeing is the Zerglings dancing back and forth. I have to say that I'm actually watching this in quick time, and it's horrible because my screen keeps having spastic fits, and it looks like the units are dancing on each other. But Anytime just getting finished off, and Plague over Anytime's Zealots as well, and Savior now is basically able to switch over to Sauron Zerg almost, just sending in masses of
Yeah.
Zerglings, and it doesn't matter if they die because there's just so many of them, and Anytime doesn't have the High Templar that he needs for storms, and he's coming under attack on all fronts, all over the map. It's just total surrender. It's just total surround for Anytime right now, unfortunately. But yeah, I think Savior timed it perfectly. He timed the transition so that he knew his Mutilus would be out before Anytime could get a shuttle out and actually get a drop on it. The only thing I could think potentially, well, actually, you know what, even that wouldn't work. Maybe if you could use the probe trick to sneak a Dark Templar through or something like that through the minerals. I don't know if that's possible. If you could do that, then maybe you could get a DT in there. But again, that would be easy for Zerg clerk defending against once they get those Mutalisks up. So I really think that this map is going to be hugely imbalanced for Zerg versus Protoss. I guess we'll find out as the Pro League progresses a little bit. It is a little bit early to say, and maybe it's just the imbalance isn't in the map, but between the players.
It's definitely been interesting. I think I don't know, maybe if he'd gone for a very, like you said, 1 gate tech build, he still could have gotten an expansion and made more Corsairs perhaps. I don't know. These days it is really hard to retain air superiority. It's funny, it used to be the other way around usually, and there's GG coming from Anytime finally. It used to be that Protoss could easily take the air with Corsairs, but lately with the, players using Scourges more, it's been really easy for Zergs to take control of the air. So I don't know, maybe if he'd gotten a bunch of Corsairs earlier, but that still would have been a really big investment in air, and then I guess Savior could have easily defeated him on the ground in that case. I don't know, it's hard to say. But Savior just having a Zerg's dream, just so many expansions and so much tech, he can do anything he wants, finally finishing off Anytime by just throwing the kitchen sink at him. So GG. Hope you guys enjoyed that set. CJ wins 3-0. Take care.